Hi, welcome back to Technical Writing Uncensored. I am here with Brittney Ball, founder of TechniDox and CTO and co-founder of Aortem. She runs the Documentation Engineer Substack. Hey, Brittney, welcome to the channel.
Hey, thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
So, Brittney, how did you get into technical writing?
Well, I actually stumbled upon it during a software engineering role I had when I was working at Gatsby. They put me in as a software engineer in the learning and development org. And part of our job as technical writers was to create the technical documentation for Gatsby. And so that's how I got introduced to technical writing. And from there, I just fell in love with it.
I know that feeling. So you write about AI on your Substack. Aside from everyone being obsessed with AI right now, how did that come about?
Well, that came about because I was truly fascinated with AI for one, but I also saw that there was a disconnect when trying to learn these different AI tools. And so through a lot of research, doing my own, studies, I found that there was a transparency problem with the documentation. And so I started just giving my own feedback on Substack, and people really enjoyed what I was writing about. And so it turned into a big thing. And I'm glad that my transparency resonated with so many different people.
So, what do you mean by AI transparency and why is it important?
So, what I mean by AI transparency is making sure that you are writing for all audiences, especially when you're talking about something as complex as AI toolings and AI systems. What we're learning now is that AI isn't just available to people who have technical backgrounds. It's also available for the general public to use. And most times the general public does not have any insight on, what's ethical or what's happening under the hood when using these different AI tools. So, that's when you have, data transparency, getting started, what to look for, what this tool should be used for and what it shouldn't be used for. So those kinds of things I feel are important to use when creating these AI tools that can be used by the general public, people who don't have backgrounds in tech.
What do you mean when you talk about AI ethics?
So when I talk about AI ethics, I'm talking about ethical use. So transparency, explainability, just breaking it down in a way that's responsible, but also keeping in mind everyone and not, just keeping in mind the whole user. So accessibility, just different things that we sometimes glass over when building fast, as most of us do in these technical fields. We build fast, but also keeping in mind the different regulations and rules that should be in place to make sure that it's not harming any users.
Yeah, that makes sense. In addition to writing about all of this, you also have a startup. What's that about? What does your startup do?
So the startup actually came first. So TechniDox was the first thing that I built after being laid off. And so I am a natural problem solver. I saw that, AI was scaling really rapidly, and I had just came out of a documentation engineering role. And so I started paying attention to the different AI tools, going through their docs, reading their docs, and trying to see if I would be able to follow along as like a new user using their tools. If I would have any questions, I wrote down the questions I had and tried to actually go through their docs and find the answers or the solutions to the questions that I had. And most of the times I was running into brick walls with finding solutions or answers to these questions. And so I built out TechniDox as a way for these AI tools to generate documentation without having someone manually have to create the documentation, but having these docs come up in maybe the GitHub repository as an issue, and they would be generated in that way. And so each pull request would be halted if there were any documentation that actually explained what this new update was doing. And so TechniDox kind of evolved as a solution to a problem that I was facing when learning how to use these different AI tools. And so alongside TechniDox, that's when I started also documenting my journey through AI tool research through the Documentation Engineering Substack channel. And so they kind of grew together. And just recently, this past April, my startup was acquired by a company called Aortem. And so they're implementing TechniDox into their ecosystem. And I'm still actively writing on Substack, still researching, still sharing what I'm learning with my audience.
What should consumers and writers know about when they're looking at an AI tool?
They should keep in mind that everyone isn't going to be, not going to have the knowledge that you would expect. Sometimes what we're seeing is that the user that you think is using your tool is not actually the user. And so we're having, children, we're having students, we're having older people who have no technical background, have not, aren't as aware as far as using computers and things and different technologies, using these AI tools, and they are taking a lot of the output as expert knowledge. But what we should do is we should make sure that we are being transparent. AI is a tool, it's still evolving, it's still growing, and you should always fact check. We should make sure that we are being transparent where they can find the documentation to back up what these AIs are outputting. We should also make sure that we are putting out the proper tutorials and learning materials alongside these new models that are coming out, because a lot of people are just, using these tools blindly, and they don't know how powerful they are or how to use that power to actually help themselves in a way that isn't harmful. So I think that just making sure that we are being transparent, we're giving, users access to the proper knowledge and showing them where to actually find it, but also making sure that that knowledge is available in the user interface. And so they don't have to search and figure out where to find this documentation, but it's also available, readily available when they get their output as far as put their prompt, and just build for everyone and not just the user that you think is going to use your product.
Makes sense. So, as an expert in AI ethics and transparency, how do you use AI in your writing workflow?
Yeah. So I have been truly transparent when it comes to my writing. I do use AI. I absolutely love the power of it and how, it can, increase productivity. And so with my writing, I do a lot of the research on Mondays. So Mondays is usually my research day where I, use BuzzFeed and, Google search and things like that to actually figure out what are the trends in AI for this current week. I gather up my information that way. Then I use Google Docs to create drafts or brainstorm what I want to talk about for that week. And from there, I use AI for my structural output. And so AI has my complete structure from, the TLDR, how I like to have my titles structured, and all of the different contents that go into my newsletters. And so it's more structural. I like to keep my own voice. So I use mostly Claude. And so I have created different skills so that AI is trained on my voice through my emails, through my past blog posts that I post on Medium, and through my social media content. So I have trained it on my voice so that it's not saying anything that wouldn't sound like me, but also I make sure that I fact check at least 3 times if I'm putting something in that is public knowledge. I make sure I fact check 3 times and use reference. I always put reference into my newsletter so that you can also go and see for yourself, so that you don't think that I'm just, putting any information out there. You can actually have a reference and read for yourself what I'm talking about. So that's the way that I use AI.
What would you recommend as best practices for writers and similar creators using AI in their workflows?
I would say you should always draft first on your own, write from your own mind, your own voice, and then use AI to help you with grammar and structure. It should not be the source. You should not, type in a prompt, create this for me, and then, copy paste that into anything, because, it doesn't sound human. It doesn't sound relatable. It doesn't sound authentic, and people are calling that out. With these different AI tools, it's really taking authenticity away from writing. And we want to make sure that we're keeping that, especially as AI progresses. So I would say just make sure that you are the person that's actually drafting these things first, and using AI as as the thing that it is. It's a tool. It's a tool for productivity. So use it as such, and not as the end all be all for your writing.
100% agree. I really like that I could, just brain dump on Claude or something and say, okay, now help me organize this into something that is a coherent article. Mm-hmm. And that I found that really useful. It takes a lot of the, you can focus on the creativity and the ideas and the thoughts, and let your robot intern organize it a bit for you.
Yeah. It's been very helpful for me to get a lot of the ideas that are always formulating in my head out, mm-hmm. and get them into the world. So I definitely enjoy it.
Absolutely. And speaking of writing, you told me when we last spoke that you were into science fiction. How has that influenced you?
It is the driving force. So I am really, really into sci-fi. I'm really into technology. And so when AI became a thing, I had always watched, tons of movies and shows on, artificial intelligence and AGI. And so when it actually became a real thing, that I was so excited to be a part of, this growth and to help in a way. And so it completely transformed my career in the direction that I wanted to take as far as my career. But I have also, with being a non-traditional person who found a pathway into tech, I also have that advocacy where I want to, I'm fascinated with tech, but I also want to make sure that it is inclusive and readily available for everyone. And so I think that that's where I align mostly with AI ethics and governance, where, I'm completely excited about everything that's happening with AI, but I also want to make sure that there are guardrails and that it's safe for individuals who don't come from the technical background or don't have the understanding or the training to actually use these tools efficiently.
Yeah, I mean, the science fiction writers have seen this coming for ages. I mean,
Yeah.
Isaac Asimov's rules for, 3 rules for a robot to make sure that it doesn't harm human. Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek universe.
Exactly.
So many of these things were seen before. A Minority Report. The reason that we have the squeezing out and squeezing in for our screens is literally because of Tom Cruise in Minority Report and the way that he was interacting with that screen. I mean, science fiction is becoming, what was science fiction is becoming our real life in a lot of ways.
About Jarvis with Iron Man, and now how people are using things like Mirrorfish or Claude Cowork to actually create these Jarvis, screens for themselves and, help with their productivity. These things are truly fascinating. And we are seeing the things that we envisioned as children in real life. And it's really exciting to watch everything unfold. But we just have to make sure, we've seen the movies and what could possibly go wrong. So we have to make sure that we're actually putting in these guardrails to actually prevent the worst.
Yeah, make sure that we end up in the Star Trek timeline and not the Star Wars or Mad Max timelines.
Oh, yeah.
Hey guys, just a quick break from the interview to tell you about my new affiliate, TechSmith. I am so happy to be a TechSmith affiliate because I have used their product Snagit for absolute years. It is my favorite screen capture tool. It does everything I need to do. I can take still screen captures, scrolling screen captures, GIFs. I can make animated movies. I can make templates. I can save styles. Anything that you want to do in a screen capture, you can do with Snagit. Links for Snagit and Camtasia are in the description. Take a look. If you click the link, you can download a free trial. And if you decide to buy, it won't cost you any extra, but I will get a percentage of the sale. It's a great way to support the channel. Check it out. Thanks, guys. And now back to the interview. Happy documenting. All right. And so speaking of doing things to make sure we end up in the good timelines, you speak at conferences about inclusive content creation. What does that mean?
That means that we are creating content, whether it's video content, it's written content, but we are keeping in mind that we have individuals that are neurodivergent and have ADHD. So if you're creating video content and it's long form, a lot of times that isn't inclusive for people that don't have that attention span to actually watch a 1 hour video. So in that case, reels, short form video are really important that actually get the whole idea across in a short amount of time. That means creating content, whether it's written content, including a TLDR at the top so that they know, have an idea of what they're going to learn and, if it actually is for them before they have to dive deep into the content. And just making sure that you're writing for everyone, whether it's a junior engineer who's fresh out of college or boot camp, or a senior engineer that has 15 years experience, everyone can actually follow your content and understand exactly what you're trying to say without pausing, without having to Google, or without feeling like they don't belong.
What should technical writers keep in mind specifically for inclusive content?
I think a lot of technical writers, especially as we progress in our careers, we sort of forget what it's like to be a junior. We forget what it's like to be new. And I think if we keep that in mind, if we remember what that felt like, I think that it would make us stronger in our craft. And so just keeping that part in mind, if you write for the junior engineers, but you also build upon that knowledge in your writing, I think that your writing will be more inclusive. So just having that compassion, having that empathy, but also holding space for anyone who wants to understand what you're trying to get across. I think that that is important.
Absolutely. That's kind of what annoys me about this current trend I'm seeing in the job market of we want a technical writer who is also an expert in whatever software or this, that, and the other thing. And I sincerely believe that there is value in coming in as a blank slate and being the new user and following that path because you can only do that once.
Exactly. Having a blank slate, like the idea, the perspective that you have is like so rare and so needed, especially with, AI becoming a big thing right now. That fresh knowledge, that fresh perspective is something that we actually need. And, I'm seeing a lot of the entry level and the junior roles aren't as popular, and we actually need those perspectives because a lot of times we get to these companies and they give us a style guide to follow, and that style guide eventually gets engraved into our minds, and we only see things from one perspective. We get this tunnel vision when creating, but bringing in someone who has fresh eyes and hasn't been trained in a way that is standard sometimes is needed, and gives us insight on things that we wouldn't look at, any other time. So
Yeah. Where do you see this going, this AI journey we're all on?
I I see it, for one, it's going to keep evolving. I see technical writers, for one, our job is going to become more popular. Our job is going to be more needed because people are looking for that authenticity. People are looking for the compassion behind the writing. And they're not, companies are now seeing that they're not getting that with this AI generated, documentation. So the title may change. It may not be called technical writing. The title may change, but the mission is still going to be the same. They're going to need more people with, like I said, fresh eyes to view and actually explain these toolings in a way that AI just can't. And so it's just very unfortunate that we're going through this kind of seesaw up and down environment right now where technical writing is needed, documentation is needed, but they're giving it to the wrong source.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I hope that was clear. I'm trying to be very transparent, but yeah, they're giving it to the wrong source with giving it to AI tools and not human writers. And I'm not really happy about that, but I think that it is changing and it will rapidly change so.
I hope so. What do you foresee as the impact of companies laying off technical writers?
I think the impact is there's going to be a lack of user trust. There's going to be a lot of confusion when using these different tools, especially if you're a new user. And I think these companies are going to actually lose a lot of money and a lot of users because of that. Because if you don't have user trust, that people don't trust the output, if they can't actually understand what's happening, then they're going to find another solution. They're going to go to a competitor. They're going to, use something else. And so if you don't have technical writers who are good at explaining things and breaking things down in a human way, then you are doing a disservice to, one, the users that have stuck with you for years, but also potential users that are looking for your solution.
What good and bad do you see coming from AI right now?
I see a lot of good, actually. I see a lot of, you know, I love the freedom that people have to create right now. I love the different ideas. I love that people are using their minds to create solutions to different things. And I just love how productivity has spiked for a lot of different people. You can generate so much in so little time. But the bad I see is that with generating a lot of content, sometimes it isn't quality. And so that quality gets watered down, and also just that user trust thing. And so you have to make sure that we are putting in the proper guardrails, but also training people on how to use AI in a way that's one productive but efficient, and that builds users' trust.
You kind of alluded to this earlier, but any advice for people dealing with this lousy job market that we're in right now?
I would say you should definitely, like I said, the job titles are changing, but the jobs are still the same. I would, one, brainstorm a bunch of things that you are good at, the things that you are passionate about, the problems that you want to solve, and figure out what new job title that has come up that would actually use a lot of those skills that you possess. And so it's just like I said in one of my most recent blog posts, it's mastering the pivot. You have to master the pivot. You can't, expect the same thing, because the job market is changing with AI. And so you have to master the pivot. You have to figure out, what am I good at? What kind of impact do you want to give, and just work around it. Whether that's freelancing, consulting. I do a lot of independent writing on Substack, or, just pivoting into a job title that's unique, but also needs the skills that you have.
Any final words of wisdom, Brittney?
I say, don't be afraid to use AI. It's, not going anywhere. It's going to continue to evolve, but just figure out the proper way to use it in great ways, and, make sure that you aren't surrendering your voice to AI. Make sure you're keeping your authentic voice always, and, just be curious, stay curious, explore and continue to learn every day.
Awesome. Thank you, Brittney. And for everyone watching, I hope you got value from this and enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. It really helps out the channel with the algorithm. And we will see you next time on Technical Writing Uncensored. Bye now.
Bye.